Well, hello there, friends. How are you? I am doing just wonderfully. Thank you so much for asking. Welcome to another episode of The Working Ant with me, your host and coach, Rami Balut. I hope you're all having a wonderful, wonderful week. I hope things are going well for you. I hope you're excited about the upcoming holidays. I hope you're excited about the future. And who wouldn't want to be excited about the future? There's so much to look forward to, despite everything and anything going on in your life. Know that I'm a big fan of yours. I am one to believe, even if we haven't met, with deep, deep, deep conviction that 2023, despite all the signs of it being a tumultuous year, riddled with uncertainty, with things that are going on, beyond our expectations, beyond what we ever could have imagined. Um, I am one, maybe one of few, perhaps one of many, to have deep conviction in that this coming up year is going to be a beautiful year. And so let's make sure it stays that way. How about that? You and I, we will commit to one another that 2023 is going to be setting you free. How about that for an intro, for a rhyme, right before we get into today's topic of conversation? Once again, it's a pleasure to be with you all. Today's topic of conversation really is just starting to set us up for a level of depth that I would implore you to have as you think through how you're going to be navigating 2023, presuming that you're coming back from what I would hope to be somewhat of a break in 2023. But that is all about the level of preparation we can have with one another, really just around conversations. And here, today, what we're going to be talking about is really how to deepen your level of conversations with people. And I think that's such an important yet overlooked topic of conversation. I'm one to believe that, we all have a level of depth that is yearning for connection, yearning for a relationship, yearning for an understanding, moving beyond a transactional nature. Even when we talk about conversations being active versus passive, I really, really hope that you don't use like one or the other here, but one really truly of connectiveness, one that is relationship based, one where you are really being able to obsess over the other person's yearning for connection and understanding. We've talked about this several times on the Working Ant, people's true desire to be understood. And we are one of those people ourselves. And so, what is one way to actually do that? And that is through the deepening of conversations. Would it be nice to move away from transactional like conversations to ones of meaning and depth, where you're on a call with someone, presumably virtually these days, and you don't really have to say much to that person because you really truly know that you just being there on that call and that person just looking at you, hearing you, your tone, the way you're breathing, that person just knows how it is you're feeling. And that is a level of depth that I want to be able to talk to you about today. I want to coach you around today. Really, how do you get to a level of depth in a conversation? I want to build up to this because it's so important in that, in such a transactional world we're living in here, especially the digital world where so many of us are working from home, permanent work from home. It's so easy to jump on a call, sort of like tune into this conversation, but immediately feel like you're tuning out towards something else. And really, many of times you're looking really just to get something out of the other person, where you need something from the other person, or that the other person needs something from you, and you're like, okay, it's just a matter of time before we transition how was your weekend? How's your day coming along? How's the weather coming about? Wherever it is that you are, into like, hey, let's really talk about why we're here today, why we're having this conversation and why it matters. And so let's make it easy on ourselves and transition there. prior to doing anything else, because you know what? It's just be easier that way. I get what I want, you get what you want. We both go on our separate ways, and we just do a little dance here around the conversation, and then we just sort of like move on with our lives. But I feel, these types of conversations are really just like opportunities for us to really acquire a level of depth with other people that we otherwise would not have. And so I want to talk about some ways to actually go about doing that. Number one, I want to make sure that you truly are doing your utmost best to learn how to love and appreciate before even getting to understanding the individual that you're going to be speaking with. And if we don't actually have that level of love, that level of appreciation, well, there's going to be very, very little chance we're actually going to get to a level of understanding. Even if we actually think we may be understanding, even if the understanding is purely transactional in nature, we're missing out on opportunities where we can actually connect with the other person on a much deeper level. And why is that important? Well, it's important because, I'm a big, big believer in nourishing your network before needing your network. You don't want to end up like Earl, the few new Earl, type of individual. And I mentioned that in an article. I think I wrote it years back on my LinkedIn profile. And I stand by that. You want to be able to open up your network, not because you actually need it, just because you actually want to nourish it, just because you actually feel the necessity, the sense of urgency in order to do so. And, I call this like an urgency rather than just an importance, because I truly believe it is so urgent for you to connect with other people, especially in days like today, where, you'll watch something, you'll hear something, you'll see something briefly, and you'll just move on with your life. And yet, many of times we're just missing an opportunity to connect with somebody, and especially when it's going to be someone where you may, at some point in time, have a crucial conversation with. And so here are some of the things that I actually recommend for you to create a more in-depth, engaging conversation. I think the obvious one is, as we talked about earlier, this level of understanding and appreciation. Now, how do we go about actually doing that? Number one, tying into that, is your ability to be empathetic, your ability to open up, your ability to talk about something, outside the weather. And this is something where you can possibly actually just create right off the bat and saying, I'd like to share this with you. I had something happen this weekend, and I thought I would share it with you prior to actually, having this conversation today, or whatever that topic or agenda may actually be. It may be something you actually create, but you creating it to begin with is actually a beautiful thing, not only for yourself and that you're sharing it with somebody else, but for the other person to feel like you're actually sharing something a little bit more intimate over like what the actual conversation is going to be about. And that's really just a beautiful thing, you being able to say like, hey, you know what? I wanted to share this with you. Tagging on to that, another thing to actually think about, let's call this one, part 3, number 3 of this, the understanding, the appreciation leading into the number 2, having the conversation and sharing something that perhaps you wouldn't otherwise share in a conversation. Number 3 here, I want you to be able to like notice something about the other person. This may be something like in the form of like an activity they may have had on their LinkedIn profile. This may be a like, it could be a post. It could be something that they've actually created that they probably believe deep down no one really actually cares about, but you happen to actually care about. And wouldn't that be actually a beautiful thing to care about something that no one really anticipated anyone ever actually caring about? And so being able to do something like that, I think, just enriches the conversation. It's almost like, really? You actually noticed that? You actually saw that? When everyone is glancing over, when everyone is moving on, you just happen to be that person that cares, that really understood, and actually sort of mentioned that in the conversation. It's a wonderful strategy to do so. Another way to sort of like gain an in-depth conversation here is to have some sort of like an epiphany of some sort. Something you're actually just thinking about where you say, you know what? I believe in such and such. I'm convinced in such and such. After thinking through, a bunch of things here that we're talking about, I fundamentally, like at my core, believe something. And I think here, in order for you to actually like really build a strong, engaging, deep, intimate conversation, you've got to actually declare something. And that declaration typically comes in the form of a belief. You being able to believe something and sharing that with the other person really just gives the other person a different flavor of a conversation that they would actually typically have. And remember what's typical here. What is typical in someone's day-to-day conversations? It's purely transactional. It's purely what's in it for them. It's purely what's in it for me. And that's typically how things go. And for you to actually declare something, to have a strong opinion, a declaration, a conviction of some sort, what actually leaves an impression on somebody else. Another thing to consider actually is opening up the possibility for you to go out of your way for the other person. So think about the last time you really went out of your way for the other person. You may be saying, hey, Coach Rami, I go out of my way for people all the time. It's a part of my job. I go out of my way for my stakeholders, for my customers, for my team, for my cross-organizational partners, from my executives, from my manager. I'm going out of my way every single day to please somebody. It's a part of what it is that I do. Well, if that's the case, perhaps you may want to do it deliberately. In the case like this, where you are going out of your way because you actually know there's a high probability, a high chance that the other person is going to appreciate you going out of your way for them. How many people typically go out of their way for the other person, even when the other person actually knows that, hey, this person is probably going out of their way just to build some rapport with me? Hey, that's all right. That's okay. If anything, you're reaffirming your care, you're reaffirming your conviction in the relationship. And going out of your way for somebody, especially when it's about, information or an introduction or a promotion of the other person. Well, that is going out of your way. It's unequivocally clear that you're doing something beyond what is natural for you. And having the ability to actually do that and becoming operationalized in doing so, well, that actually just wins you some really great kudo points, brownie points. And in fact, what it does is it just deepens the relationship, especially if you actually follow up. And when you follow up in a way where you're not only asking like, hey, did this work out for you? But more so that like, hey, did this work out for you? By the way, I am so happy I was able to do something for you. You're calling it out. You're being explicit about it. You're actually doing something for the other person and calling the fact that you're actually doing it out to the other person. So there's almost like this equity of like, hey, you know what? This person went out of their way for me. Am I going to be able to go out of my way for them? And one other particular way to truly immerse yourself into a conversation, have a much stronger level of depth, is to show gratitude about something. You know what? Today, I'm really grateful for this conversation. I waited a long time for this conversation. I was just excited the other day. My butt was burning over the fact that we were actually going to be meeting today. And I'm so happy you've taken the time out of your day to invest that with me. Similarly, when we do that, for ourselves and having time to think and understand sort of like where we're going, what we're going to be doing, making sure the other person knows just how gratifying it is for us to have that conversation, just how much we don't take it for granted, just how much we are grateful for that person in our lives and the time they've actually taken towards investing themselves in a conversation. Another really, really great way to like immerse yourself in conversations, to have a much stronger level of depth in a conversation, is to sort of like switch up when you are engaging with this person. The when is extremely important. It's almost like, hey, you know what? If you have a regular cadence with someone that's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly, I hope not yearly, but especially if it's somewhat important, but sort of splitting up and diversifying the way you actually communicate and the when you actually communicate. So let's talk about like the when. The when is if I have a regular cadence with somebody and all of a sudden somebody's going to ping me, someone's going to reach out to me, I'm going to say like, hey, well, this is sort of like out of the ordinary. I'm typically used to speaking to this person once every week, once every other week, et cetera, et cetera. they're reaching out to me in this particular at this particular time. And so that actually makes the other person feel like, hey, you know what? This is not just I'm going to wait until it actually happens. It's reaching out at a different time, and perhaps just to say hello, just to say I was thinking about you. Perhaps it could be for like another reason. It could be something that you may have found, an article, a piece of information, an idea perhaps that could have contributed to this person's what's in it for them. And the what's in it for them for most is our ability to envision, really envision what are this person's performance evaluation metrics. What does this person get evaluated for? Is it more sales? Is it, more margins? Is it a lower time to resolve? Is it, stability for those on the tech side of the world? Is it creating a new project or program? Is it being able to communicate metrics? Is that person able to just lead a great team, empower the people to do their best work? What are those things that this person actually is being measured by? Gives us a clear indication of what actually matters to that person. I mean, nobody would actually go about their day to day. Let's just say most wouldn't, for the sake of our conversation with one another today. Most, I would hope at least here, maybe Rami is going to retract this statement at some point in time, but let me just say, I would believe that most would not go about their day to day, not knowing what it is they're actually measured by. Meaning, they would know that this, in the very, very least, would impress their manager, would impress their cross-functional partners. It's actually a part of what they get evaluated on in their performance review. So actually knowing that piece of information really allows us to help the other person much more deliberately and intentionally. But here it's really just around the when. If you split up when you actually would reach out to somebody, you reach out to someone in the morning, try reaching out to them in the afternoon. You reach out on a Wednesday, try reaching out on a Monday or a Friday. Just having that level of connection with someone at a different time gives us an opportunity to immerse ourselves in a much deeper conversation. I can't tell you how many times my clients would say, hey, Rami, reaching out at a different time of the week actually led to a much deeper conversation that I typically would have never had with this person, because their expectation of going into a meeting with me virtually is that we're going to talk about a particular agenda. We're going to talk about a particular subject, and it's going to go a particular way. So the timing of all that actually matters as well. The platform you use also matters as well. So I'm a big fan, no surprise, video notes, video messages, at minimum audio messages. After all, I'm doing a podcast, so why wouldn't I be a fan here? Of reaching out to somebody to describe something that they typically, or you typically would describe in an email. Maybe it could be a ping, it could be a Slack or a Teams, something in a platform that you typically would not use in a way to actually communicate with the other person. And the type of communication actually goes hand in hand with it. I'm a big fan of just calling someone directly when they're actually free. If that's not possible, an audio note. If that's not possible, go above and beyond and send a video message to somebody. And then come and thank me later and say, Rami, you know what? Sending a video note really just changed someone's perspective. Not only were they able to have what I'm saying resonate with them, but it actually influenced them in a very, very positive way. Again, this is actually a form of going out of our way, because it's so easy for most of us just to ping somebody, just to write a few words, and that's the way it goes. But in this particular case, if you're actually doing something a little different, a little unconventional, even radical at times, what actually makes someone look at you much differently, and the conversation you're about to have with them, either in that moment or in the future, much deeper. The idea here is to have connection with another person. And the more you can connect with another person, the more you can make a deliberate effort to emotionally connect with the other person, well, the more chances you're going to have to sway, influence, impact this person's opinion, approval, whatever it is in the future for something you may not necessarily need now, but you may actually need in the future. And building that relationship, nourishing that relationship before you even need that relationship is one of the best things you actually can do for yourself. And so deepening these conversations, the idea behind this is for you to really just be more meaningful, Find more meaning in the work that you do. Find more meaning in the people that you work with. Find more meaning in the conversation so you can have a better quality conversation, so you can up-level yourself, whether you're a leader or an individual contributor or someone in transition, interviewing with a hiring manager, recruiter. It's no different here. The level of depth you can actually establish really gives us a much higher probability that we're going to get further ahead in a shorter amount of time. I've seen this time and time again. I've witnessed this time and time again. I want nothing but the best for you, of course, and this is sort of the reason why we're talking about this. Ask yourself at minimum. For those of you thinking, you know what, Rami, I'm listening to you on my drive to work. I'm listening to you on my way back home here. I'm listening to you at my leisure. I don't know if I'm going to be able to go out of my way right now for somebody. We're at minimum here. Ask yourself, are the conversations I'm having at a level of depth that would have wanted someone to have with myself? Like truly have with myself. And I get so many of us are burned out, we're overworked. There's a lack of clarity and strategy in the way things are going, especially nowadays. People are trying to hedge and stop the hemorrhaging, so to speak, and bleeding of cash flow and operational costs. But here, really, it's just a matter of the conversation itself. Are you having a conversation that actually is one of depth? And that is really, truly being able to connect with the other person, understand where this person is coming from. Your clock just started while having this conversation. But if you think about it, this person's clock started from the moment they may have woken up, or the night before, or the week before, or the quarter before, or even the year before. And it's really important to recognize that, and really understand that, hey, you know what? I'm getting this person now. But this person obviously was doing so many other things prior to our conversation. At minimum, I could try to get to know what this person actually does, what moves the needle for this person, what does this person value, what do they find significant? And sometimes we may have to ask this question directly. Hey, you know what? What's top of mind for you? Hey, you know what? I was thinking about you, and I was wondering, what keeps you up at night? What's your shower think? What goes on through the recesses of your mind, perhaps, when your day comes to a close? And try to remember as much as possible what this person is working on, and use that as an opportunity to open up a way for you to get more involved, get closer to this person. In my coaching practice, sometimes we talk about identifying just some cross-functional, cross-organizational partnership, relationship, initiative, even if it may not yield a massive impact. Starting small, at minimum, gets you closer to the other person. It gets you closer to their world. It gets you closer to their optics of understanding the value and significance they get from their lives. And you being able to understand that through a depth of conversation, I can't tell you how much it's going to help in your career, but it also is going to help yourself. You being able to tap into that level of depth for the other person is really a reflection upon ourselves. It's a reflection upon our ability to go deep. And, I understand that, we're busy. A lot of us have back-to-back meetings. It's hard to get to a level of depth that we otherwise wouldn't have had, had we not had all of these meetings back to back. But in this particular case, remember, having a strong level of depth is one of the most beautiful things you could do for yourself, for your career, and for the other person. So remember that your next conversation doesn't have to be a transactional one. It can be one built on relationships. It can be one built on understanding, connection, and true love for the other person and what they do, their work, and really a love for themselves and their character. And wouldn't that be a beautiful thing, friends? Wouldn't it? Well, I hope you found this useful. It's always a beautiful topic of conversation to go through. How to increase that level of depth in your next crucial conversation with somebody. With that being said, thank you as always for investing your time with me. I hope you are gearing up for some time off for the holidays. I hope you are looking forward to the future. I certainly am, having my future with you on this journey. Thank you so much for investing your time with me once again, and I'll see you next week on another episode of The Working Out. This is your host and coach, Rami Balut, signing off for now. Bye.